Should we get rid of HR? That's the bold suggestion put forth by Jamie Gutfreund, this week's guest on the DesuckifyWork podcast. Why get rid of it? Because it's become a fear-based function that stifles creativity, prevents honest conversations, and enforces a referee culture that treats team members like children versus adults who are capable of sorting through the hard stuff all on their own. What would we build in its place? Great question. Jamie and I explore that and more during our conversation. We touch on generational differences at work, what real psychological safety looks like, how to balance different levels of ambition within a team, including how those folks are compensated, the influence of the creator economy on how we work and get our messages out to the world, and the role of executive leadership in driving culture and how no HR initiative can overcome the tone set by the C-suite. The main takeaway, let's be adults and get out of our own way already. Sounds pretty freaking awesome to me. Who's in? Welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast, the show where we cut through the BS and find ways to make work more fun, more human, and less ridiculous. All of which makes your business more profitable, by the way. If you enjoy this one, please like, share, rate, review, or subscribe to the podcast. Let the desuckifying begin. Here's Jamie. Okay, Jamie Gutfreund, welcome to the DesuckifyWork podcast.
Just so I can say Desuckify, I would have said yes to be a guest on the show.
Yeah, well, we're going to have some fun, hopefully, and dive into some different stuff. But before we do, just if you take a moment and introduce yourself to the audience, what do you do for work? And, how did you come to be doing it?
That's a really good question. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I am a recovering CMO is how I like to describe myself these days, which means I've had a fortunate and interesting career working for very large brands and agencies. So I've worked at everywhere from Hasbro and Microsoft and Expedia to Creative Arts Agency, WPP, the holding company. I've worked for creator marketing agencies. So I've done the circuit. And today I help brands in the creator economy. I really help big brands figure out how to move their money from, as I say, from TV to TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. So I consult with brands to help them navigate the creator economy and help them maximize their investments in the space.
Awesome. Well, we'll come back to some of that in a bit because I want to explore the creator economy a little bit because I think it means different things to different people. So I want to check in on that. But before we go there, I'm curious for you. This is the DesuckifyWork podcast after all. What role does work play for you in your life?
It's funny you asked that because somebody recently, I'm an empty nester now, and somebody said, "So what are you doing with all your free time? Do you have hobbies and stuff?" And I said, "Hobbies? My work is my hobby." I think because I'm a Gen X, I have some hobbies, but I don't view all of it as work. There's parts that they have to pay you to do, and then there's parts that you don't have to get paid to do it that you love. And I try to make it the parts that I love are the things that I'm doing now that I'm on my own. So I started my business about 2 years ago. Independently, I left corporate life and never looked back.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. I work for myself as well and Gen X as well. And you do have some control over a lot of this is just stuff it's really fun. And then of course there's the, oh God, I got to do that part of it. But what inspired you, what made you want to do your own thing after, a really nice run in the corporate space?
Yeah, I think what did they say? They'd say it's hard to manage high performers, and I couldn't manage to manage myself anymore. And I'm a little too honest and I can't hold back what I'm thinking. And so it was time to put myself in a situation where I didn't have to be politically correct. And now, as I say, I can't get fired. I am feeling unleashed. It's great. I don't have to watch my words the way I used to. And I can, really just be honest and direct. And a lot of my clients tell me that they hire me specifically because they know I won't bullshit them.
Do you have any examples of what that kind of bullshit felt like and what kinds of things you were finding yourselves biting your tongue on?
In my career, in corporate world?
Yeah, I know we all do it, but what was the stuff that kind of really you really wanted to say it and you felt I don't know if I can?
Well, starting back in the days and, when I first started working, I didn't know there was sexual harassment. That was not, that was just part of the job descriptions. I had no idea. And I started early in my career, I was working in sports marketing. I would have some interesting experiences that included going to Windsor, Canada, which is where Chrysler was based in those days, and traveling as a young 20-something woman. And we would go out, have a presentation, go out for Prime Robo Jus.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to a strip club. And then inevitably somebody would drive me back to my hotel and I would be fending them off. But that was normal. So that was one thing. But as I got older and I had more experience and more opinions, lots more opinions, I had a very hard time playing small.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing what I really felt and worrying about someone's ego versus what was good for the business or what was right.
Yeah.
And that was a pattern frequently.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tolerate doing that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think that is? I mean, there's so many places that can feel that way where you really feel zippered, and yet you're also doing a disservice to yourself as a company when you're not getting the contrary opinions, right? The ones that maybe tell you like what we're doing is ridiculous or what we're doing isn't nearly bold enough or like whatever. What do you think is motivating the, sit down and be quiet mindset in so many corporate spaces?
Well, I love to point to an example of, I don't know why I'm talking about car companies so much here, but GM had a famous incident where there was a valve that wasn't working and it actually caused some serious bodily injury, and it was a huge lawsuit. And it was well known within the ranks, but nobody wanted to tell their boss because they were afraid that they would be held responsible. So nobody said anything. And then Mary Barra had to really fix this, and it was expensive and human life and cost. And they did an analysis afterwards, and it was this fear of not conforming and and being negative and drawing too much negative attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest problem in the workplace is when it's a fear-based environment.
Yeah.
And from a business perspective, that means that the teams are functioning in their lizard brain, not their creative, expansive brains.
Yeah.
So it's very costly. I also think that there are many, many people who bring their personal family psychosis, psychopathy issues into the workplace unresolved. I mean, there's lots of people in pain walking around, lots of people who are challenged, who have issues, and they come into the workplace. And sometimes, if you're working for a malignant narcissist, it's hard enough to be friends with one, much less work with one. And so that you've got a lot of challenges. And then one of my favorite topics, and I think I mentioned this when we were prepping for this, is there's a great book. There's two authors. I always only remember one. It's called Coddling of the American Mind.
Mm-hmm.
The author I remember always is Jonathan Haidt. And one of the things that he talks about is the importance of resilience and the importance of being able to have contrary opinions. And this book was written way before woke culture or anything happened. And what he explained was that we have fallen into a referee society.
Mm-hmm.
Many times when you have these difficult situations, the default move is not to address the conflict one-to-one, but it's to run to HR or run to another referee. And if you look at fear-based environments, if you look at people who have psychological personality challenges in the workplace on both sides, and then you've got HR that's been weaponized, it makes for some challenging issues.
Yeah. I mean, that whole, and I read that book. I love that book. Yeah. Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff is the other person.
Thank you.
It's really interesting, right? Because it's sort of, the way I sort of shorthanded it was it becomes a tattletale culture. It's like we want to just go and kind of run to mommy, as opposed to having the skills to sort out and work with each other and trust that we will. And what's amazing to me is this can show up in a lot of creative environments, as you talked about, and it breaks down the creative process, right? If you don't feel like you can have normal conversations and tough conversations where you can go, I think that idea is ridiculous. And then you might go, well, here's why it's not. Okay, great. Tell it to me. I still think it's ridiculous. Or no, that's interesting, but not that part. Like when you shut that down and everything feels like, oh, I don't like this, therefore I need to go kind of complain to somebody. I mean, it's amazing you get anything done, but the thing I see is it feels like easy to slip into that culture, but it feels tough to break out of. What do you think can actually help you break out of that culture once it's sort of become the fear-based lizard brain, go to HR kind of space? Is it possible?
One of the things that I do know that helps is you have to find a core group of people where you can have candid conversations, but not bitch sessions. Mm-hmm. The natural inclination is to find similarly aggrieved people, and everybody loves that, like, oh, I hate that guy, or she said this, and you sort of perpetrate the negativity.
Yeah.
So one of the ways is to create your own safe space with a core group of people that you can actually be real with. I don't know that any one person can ever change a culture. I think the change agent is a myth. Having had those jobs a few times doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Outsider cannot come in and change a culture. And I think you have to find core moments where you can do it. In fact, there was this great book called The No Asshole Rule. And it was written by a group of Stanford professors. And they hired somebody with tenure that, as they were interviewing, there's like 12 Stanford professors, that they all knew individually that this guy was a nightmare. And they didn't want to hire him, but they were afraid. They didn't want to insult the other people. They didn't speak up. And so they hired this one person. And it was an unmitigated disaster. It was terrible. Years, and they finally were able to get this person out of the organization. I think it took a really long time. They're Stanford professors, so they wrote a book analyzing the impact of one asshole in an organization. Wow. And one of the things that it does talk about is finding you have to manufacture a safe space. And I also think as the work has become, for some people, it has become a full service endeavor, but as we've gone remote, the expectations of what work should provide for you are very different. You're a generalist. You went to work, people yelled at you, you were lucky to have a job, and you left, and that was it.
Right. I
had very little expectations other than getting my paycheck for my job. I think that's, so you kind of have to manage your own expectations of what you can reasonably expect from the modern workplace. And that's hard, especially now that it's remote.
Yeah.
For most people, maybe not for much longer.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like to ask the question about, what role work plays in your life, because I think that can then help you. Anybody should ask that question, because then it helps you decide like what you're willing to tolerate or not. And then find a place that aligns with that value, right? If you really value work and you want it to provide purpose and meaning, I'm all in favor of that. And I would say to some degree, I lived that, but I knew it. And so I knew if I went to a place and it didn't feel like it aligned with me, I would, I'd leave, because I didn't want to spend a lot of time in a place where I knew I couldn't find some enjoyment in my work. I mean, the whole reason I worked in advertising was it was sort of a job, but not quite a job, like it had this other side to it that felt a little bit like, playground. So there is that. But I also think like, you're mentioning this idea of safety. And I hear that term, psychological safety. And even that feels up for interpretation, right? Because the way you described it is a place where you can actually have honest, direct conversations and get to the heart of whatever's going on. And that's when I hear that, I go, well, that's great. Let's do that. But I also feel like psychological safety can be sort of weaponized in the other direction, which is like, I don't want to feel harmed or offended or upset ever. Right. Then that goes back to coddling and all that stuff. And so I guess the question would be, how do we get aligned on what psychological safety means? And maybe what are the terms of a truly psychologically safe place?
Deep thoughts here. Well, generationally, it all goes back to how you were raised in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to your expectations. So my expectations for a psychologically safe work environment are that you're hired to do the best job you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And you care about excellence. You care about delivering your best work, and you assume that everyone else has the same motivation.
Yeah.
When that's not aligned and some people are at work because whatever it might be, that's a challenge. And so I believe that being able to honestly address what the motivations are and what is required to get your best work done.
Yeah.
At least that can be an honest conversation.
Yeah.
Where I think you get stuck, and I've lived this, I've seen this. You've got 80% of the people, 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. And the tendency for in leaner teams now is to have less than full staff. AI, forget anything else.
Yeah.
Then what that does is it puts pressure on the high performers to pick up the slack from everybody else, which means that you have these divides in the workplace. You have the workers and you have the lurkers. And that's a kind of differences really make it so it's not psychologically safe because it's an unfair burden. So I believe that this idea that you're allowed to say something without immediately going to some referee who's going to evaluate what you say is never would have happened back in the day. And now it's just it's overused. I had an experience once where I was on a group call with large group of people, client and internal, and it was a difficult conversation, and we had a debrief afterwards. So everybody got on another Zoom.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of exhausted because it had been a difficult client meeting. And I did this. I went, oh my God, I want to blow my brains out.
Right.
Nobody said anything, whatever. The next day I get a letter from HR. A formal complaint was made that I triggered somebody. And I remember feeling so blown away that this person couldn't call me. And I realized it's all remote. I'd never met this. I don't even know who it was to this day. I have suspicions, but I hadn't met half the people in person. So I can see how it might have been challenging. Our motivation isn't the same in that case. I was trying to, do the best job I could for the company.
Yeah.
I'm not saying poor me, but that was just one of those things where it didn't make sense to me that infraction would be taken as an infraction. And so therefore, I didn't feel psychologically safe because I didn't know where I could place my feet, so to speak. I couldn't. Comes into the definition conversation.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, the idea that somebody could be sort of quote unquote offended by that. Okay. I mean, it wouldn't bother me, but okay. But underneath it is the cultural expectation, right? It's how do we deal with being upset by what somebody does, right? And that at some point, I feel like that just needs to come from the top and be established. And it needs to be, part of the conversation when anybody comes into a place like, hey, this is how we work. If we have difficulties with each other, we expect that you're going to try to work it out with each other first. If that doesn't work, then feel free to escalate. But always the default is let's work it out. So in that case, that would mean if two people are at odds over something in a remote setting, you jump on a Zoom and you talk it out. And 99% of the time, that should be enough.
It should be. And it's sad that it has to be an explicit instruction, but I think it's important. And I agree with you that it should be stated and not assumed.
Yeah.
And it's a simple fix.
Yeah.
But not necessarily in reality. But yes, it should be.
Yeah. And I get it, right? A part of it feels like we should all just be adults and show up and be able to handle ourselves. But I think to your point earlier, you mentioned we're all showing up with different stuff, right? coming, maybe somebody's coming with different family issues or how they were raised or whatever. We talked a little bit about generations, which we can dig into more. But I think ultimately, I think a lot of companies actually do a really bad job of sort of quote unquote onboarding people of just like the basics of like, what does it mean to work here? What do we care about? How do we work together? How do we relate to each other? Like, it doesn't have to take long, but there could be a very simple process of just getting people to know this is what it's like to work here. And if you ultimately don't like it, that's fine. But this is what we expect of you.
If you look in sort of employee manuals and onboarding documents, I hadn't thought about it this way, but they're usually pages and pages of this is how we use Slack. These are our Slack hygiene rules.
Right.
Here's our WhatsApp rules or whatever it might be. But there isn't anything on resolution.
Yeah.
Just
right.
about how to use the channels and how to not get, a phishing scam.
Right.
But know how to be able to solve a difference without going to HR as your default. That's an interesting, simple.
Yeah, and in many ways, it's at the crux of what I think a lot of diversity programs maybe we're aiming at, have aimed at, but I don't know how well we've done with that. It's just like, how do we be together when we're not all familiar with each other? We don't know all of each other's stuff. We don't know all of each other's triggers, and that's again, like if you're with a group of friends, like you just talk it out. I mean, a new person comes into the group and they're upset about something, and you go, okay, I never thought that would upset you, but fine, I don't have to do that around you. Like you can figure out a way to solve that. And I think companies struggle with this. And I often wonder too, like, I'm curious to get your opinion on this. Like, what is the company ultimately responsible for, right? Like what do they own? If people are not showing up with the sort of skills to navigate adult life, at a fundamental level, what should they be doing to support that? And if they're not, then what do they do to get better at sort of recognizing when somebody's not going to be able to show up and kind of, create the kind of safe space that you're talking about where we can all just, talk like adults?
I assume that could, and I've had, companies where it is part of the hiring process as you pressure test for conflict resolution skills, et cetera. Yeah. But I think you have to really train for interviewing to pressure test for that as a specific criteria, because it's always just been about skills and say cultural fit. But cultural fit is, do you work really hard? Are you a nice person?
Right.
I don't really think there's a lot of attention paid to conflict resolution anywhere in the world right now, generally. But in places, it's such a critical component of what we do. And the bigger the company, the harder it is. I don't know. Actually, I take that back. The smaller the company, I think the harder it is because it feels more personal in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. You can almost hide in a big company or create your own little, like you said, kind of your own little safe space amongst the group of people. But in a small place, there is nowhere to hide.
And being able to ask those questions, those are not questions that you can get at easily when you're interviewing for a job to try to, to see what the culture is like.
Yeah.
At a certain point in your career, you mentioned it earlier, I think you have to have non-negotiables. Like there are things that I cannot tolerate. There's warning signs and red flags all over the place.
Yeah.
But you have to know to look for them, and you have to know to look for them and measure them against what's important to you. And for younger people, I think for many people now, they're just happy to have a job.
Yeah. 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 And like on some level, when you're just happy to have a job, you have to maybe reset your expectations, right? You have to go, okay, I know this is not ideal, but maybe I'm willing to tolerate a little more because I am happy to have a job. And my choices now are have a job or not have a job. And I choose to have a job, even if, a greater percentage of it sucks, but I do think, go ahead.
I also tell younger people, because I partner with people. I don't say I mentor, I partner because it's back and forth. But I always say, don't forget when somebody is behaving a certain way that you report to, 99% of the time it has nothing to do with you personally. You have to remember that before they came into the office today, they could have gotten into a fight with a loved one, a kid. They could have an illness in the family, financial pressures. You can't default to assume that it's directed at you. So we all have to take care of our own feelings.
Yeah.
and not, you ask what's work responsible for. I don't think work is responsible for making you feel happy. I think that's your own responsibility. I think what work is responsible for is having a clear set of objectives of what your goals and mission is, how the company expects you to deliver on that, the resources they're going to provide you, and then the reasonable expectation of what the way that you collaborate, the company is.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't think a company is necessarily responsible. I know a company, at least the way I look at it, is not responsible for your social well-being. They're not responsible for making sure you have friends at a company. They're not responsible for any of the entertainment things or to help you make friends. That's not a company's job.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think you create the right kind of space and those things can happen. And you may choose to create a space where those things are definitely lower on the list of like the kind of culture you want. You might be like, I don't want a place where people are friends. I want people to show up and heads down. And that's fine. I think ultimately every company gets to decide the kind of place they want to be. But I want to come back to the collaboration thing, because this is the thing that always sort of blows my mind, which is, especially in the advertising world where we're communications people, but terrible at communicating internally. You mentioned the idea that there's very little conversation around how we should communicate, collaborate, deal with conflict. And yet, like, literally that's our job. Like the job, we're in so many meetings, so all we're doing all day is communicating with people to try to get to the objectives and serve the mission that the company has stated. And yet there's very little effort put in to sort of go.
There's Slack.
Yeah.
There's email.
Yeah. Which
but that's the default. That's not communication. That's sharing of information. That's not communication.
Agreed. Right. I mean, I personally hate Slack. I think Slack was designed to destroy our nervous systems because it's just like ping, 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 ping.
Well, Slack was actually, this is an interesting point. Slack was originally designed for startups that needed ping, 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 because they needed fast sharing of information.
Right.
It was never designed the way it's used.
Yeah.
WhatsApp was designed so that people that had family and friends in foreign countries could easily communicate with them. A lot of the tools that we use now were not designed for the way that we're using them. And so inherently there are challenges with these platforms. They're not designed that way. And I think as younger generations get less and less comfortable with face-to-face and phone calls and all those things, people I've worked with we have a joke is like, I always say to somebody, don't send them an email, pick up the phone and make a phone call. And it's become sort of a point of an ongoing joke in my friends and people that I've worked with for a long time, because it's so exotic to pick up the phone and just call people.
Yeah.
And it's so much faster, and they don't answer. They don't. Okay.
Yeah. The weirdest thing I've seen is that you call somebody who's younger, and when they pick up the phone, they don't even say hello.
Really?
There's a cultural norm that's evolved where there's sort of their expectation is you called me, so as soon as you hear the ringing stop, you start talking and say, hey, this is so and so. That just sort of blows my mind again. But it's an illustration of your broader point, which is just that method of communication is like 78th on the list of preferred methods. But yet for 90+% of things, it could be the way to faster resolution, right? Rather than what becomes a 2-hour Slack back and forth, right?
Getting mad on Slack.
Getting mad and all that, versus all right, the three of us who really have stake in this are just going to jump on a call together, and then you figure it out. And yeah, maybe it gets a little heated, but it's 10 minutes.
Friends share the ChatGPT written messages to stop them from sending. I've had friends of all ages get so frustrated. They go to ChatGPT and they say, this is the situation. This is how I feel. Craft me a note that's going to really communicate it this way. And then they read it and oh shit, I can't say that. I can't send that. And then they, it's like, don't let me send this.
That's
satisfying, but don't do it. But believe that there's a little bit of cultural training. I mean, we grew up, you called your friend, the parents answered, and if you didn't have good phone etiquette, especially in my house,
yeah,
hello, Mrs. Jones, whatever, Sally home, this is Jamie Gutfreund, or, whatever my name was at the time, and I'd love to speak with her or something. That was just etiquette.
yeah.
I don't have that anymore. What I do if I called somebody and they didn't answer, I think, or hello.
I think you're eventually forced to say hello. And then somebody will be like, yeah, hey. And then it's like, almost like, why did it take so long for me to say hello? It's weird.
It'll probably happen to me since you
Yeah, it's like that whole effect where you suddenly notice a thing because you've been told about it, like when you buy a red car and you see it. Yeah. I'm curious on the generational thing. I mean, what do you notice? I mean, we do have multiple generations in the workplace, from everywhere from boomer to Z is currently in the workplace. Like, I don't know if any alphas are there yet, but I don't think so. Close though, right? I think they're in their teens, maybe.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? There's always a lot of buzz about intergenerational conflict. What are you seeing?
In a previous life, I studied generations and helped marketers understand it. And that was when millennials were the dominant generation. You don't really need that same kind of research. It was like, scientific research at the time. One of the things that I really stress when I talk about this is the fact that every generation thinks the generation that follows them are idiots.
Yes.
And that's time immemorial. And it's very funny when you start to see the dynamics. Boomers hated Gen X. They thought we were slackers. Gen X hates millennials. Millennials don't like Gen Z. Plutarch, who is a Roman historian, said that the Roman culture was being diminished because of roads, because the young people were now moving back and forth between towns too easily, and they were absorbing information and ideas that were controlled by their elders. And so it's been since the beginning of time, people always feel that way. So apart from that, study of generations is a little different. It used to be 20-year blocks. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
You have to kind of look at it more about what were the defining incidents in their childhood and in their life.
Yeah.
And the biggest issue I see now is the expectation of work and what you expect from that. The role your parents play in your work life. They shouldn't be in your work life at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's also besides the work ethic, it's the role of work in general, because as younger people, that work is not the be all to end all. And they probably, I'm not built that way because I've got too many years under my belt of not being that way, but it's not the end all to be all. So for me, when I'm in a corporate environment and people are clocking out at 5:00 and then they have Fridays off, that means that nothing's getting done until Monday. That would drive me crazy. But it took me a little while to figure out that they don't care. They're done at 5 and they're gonna, for at least the time being, they'd rather make less money, have less responsibility, so they can have a different kind of a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I didn't have that perspective. So kind of understanding that not everybody is at the same starting point. Different cultural norms is part of it. I do think that the parental relationships are a big difference. I mean, hear all these hilarious stories now about parents calling jobs or interviews to find out about Johnny or Susie and all those things. And it's not so much it's kind of crazy, but for previous generations, we were raised by wolves. I would rather lived on the street than move home with my parents. It just wasn't done. It was social suicide.
Right.
So you have that kind of involvement, and you didn't have the technology that allowed parents to monitor your every move.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is that their fault? No, but I don't even think my parents knew what I did for a living.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I'm trying to think how vocal was that? They knew what I did, but I don't know. I might have changed jobs and not told them. I certainly wasn't telling them necessarily about that I was interviewing or whatever. if I told them about my job, it was more just like, because maybe they asked, like, how's your job? And I would just sort of say, yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm doing this now. Okay. But it wasn't integrated. Like what you're describing is it feels like that parental involvement is fully integrated into the process of I'm seeking work, or I'm talking any involvement with my work, or, hey, I want a promotion. My parents are a part of that equation in a almost equal way, which strikes me as crazy. I don't think it's bad to maybe talk to your parents and get advice. That's great. But having them get involved in the conversations with the workplaces seems really strange to me. I don't know. And again, I think coming back to Jonathan Haidt's book, it's just, at what point will you then develop those skills, right? At some point, you're going to wake up and you're 40 and you're like, okay, I still don't really know how to go out and advocate for myself, because maybe I've had my folks do it. That's the really big worry. I mean, I think when you're 22, you can maybe get away with it, but it's not cute anymore when you're 35 or 40, as even if it's cute now. I want to come back to the work you do a little bit. You mentioned this idea of the creator economy, and I think it's sort of a buzzy term that's been around for a long time, but I'm curious just to get your take on, like, what is the creator economy?
That's a big question. Well, it's primarily the shift from power and influence being concentrated in limited places like networks, newspapers, studios, etc. And now it's a much more of a distributed network that any person can have their own audience, and you don't need a partner to pay for distribution in the same way, so that therefore you could have your own business and your own audience. And if you have an audience, whether it's 100 people or 1 million people, that's your economic upside. You get to create. Now, there's a big difference between influencers and creators, and that's just terminology, but mostly creators are independent business people that create some kind of content that a community of people are willing to spend time and or money on, and that is this redistribution of power and gatekeeping.
I like that definition. It's very clean, which I appreciate. And it helps me think about it a little differently. But what I think about it also is, like, I worked in advertising for years. I work now as an executive coach, and you effectively have to be a creator in that space, meaning you have to put out content to sort of build your brand.
Do you?
It feels like it. It does feel like that. I want to come back.
I used to say that all the time, and it depends. I think and this is controversial. I think people have to know how you think. If you want to be known as an expert in a field, they have to know how you think, but they don't need to know that I'm excited or I'm proud to receive this award. I don't think you
for
need
sure.
to. And so this idea of you have to create content. And so for a lot of people, they're very intimidated. They're like, I don't know what to say on LinkedIn. And I always tell people, I believe it's really helping whatever universe is important to you, whether it's looking for a new job or a certain field or a certain level of executive. Knowing how you think about your profession and your skills is far more valuable than knowing what you're doing every minute of the day. But it gets confused. So you don't need to have a constant, stream of creative content. The requirements are a little bit less. I do think CEOs have an obligation.
Yeah, and I think that's fair.
Different, but the junior copywriter, unless they want to, but it's a lot of pressure for people. But I think for creators that can, really what there is, they're community leaders, the really good ones.
Yeah.
Because they understand their audience better than anybody else. And that's why I say it doesn't matter if it's 100 or 1 million or whatever. Yeah. You know what that community is interested in, and you know how to communicate to them in a way that they want on a basis.
Yeah, I like that view. And I think I agree with that view. I certainly think you don't need to be sharing all of the details of everything you're doing, and proud to do this, honored to do this, humbled to do this. I think sharing your perspective on the slice of the world that you're living in can be useful. And I was always sort of comfortable doing that, certainly from a written perspective. Doing the podcast is sort of an evolution of that for me. But what I think about is you get to a certain level, and if you feel like you want to do that, what I've noticed is it sort of feels like an extrovert's game, meaning it's a lot of video content. It's a lot of putting yourself out there. And I work with people who struggle with this, and they're usually more introverted. They're usually more, very aware of themselves and worried about putting themselves out there. I mean, if they feel like they should, or maybe the better choice is want to, if they want to be out there, is there a way to be out there as an introvert that can connect with people? Yeah. Okay.
I'm an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until later. So yes.
Yeah.
And I think you can. I think you have to know what your lane is.
Yeah.
Find the things that make you excited to talk about, and that's what you talk about.
Yeah.
Not talk about everything.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know what their agenda is. They don't know what their areas that they should talk about. And the pressure test for that is if it lights you up inside and that spidey sense makes you happy to talk about it, then it doesn't really feel like you're putting yourself out there. It's I'm sharing something that I'm excited about. And that's how I've done it. Have had periods of my life I do a lot of public speaking and I'm in big rooms. It's exhausting to me. So I better be talking about something that I'm excited about. And what I found that makes me excited is when I can help connect dots for somebody and have them think about something in a new way or learn a new fact or an insight. And that's exciting to me. Just putting myself out there, I couldn't do it. And I went through a stage where I was learning TikTok because I felt like I needed to know how to do it. And I kind of know how to do it. I've done it. I don't love it unless I'm talking about something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. I like that sort of guideline you've put there, right? If it really lights you up, it feels somewhat more effortless. And maybe there's still a little nerves of pressing the post button.
Yeah.
But I think so many people feel like they have to do what other people are doing and do it like other people are doing. And honestly, 95% of content feels that way. It feels like it's all been placed in this box and it's delivered the same way. And yet the people who originally did that were actually just doing what lit them up and doing it in a way that worked for them. And now everybody's sort of trying to copy them. So yeah, I like that. I like that approach. I want to just touch on real quick, just because this is the world we live in, the AI, innovation, technology, all that kind of stuff. How can we have a sort of healthy relationship with technology, particularly AI? It just feels like it's just turned everybody upside down right now. And so what do you think is the right mindset to approach it with?
It's kind of the same thing. It's like, what are you excited about doing? So start small, when you're using AI tools, you don't have to be an expert. Every piece of social content is shaming you right now about, oh, you're using AI like a kindergartner. That, first of all, it's just find the things that are it could be concentric circles. Find the core 3 to 5 things that make your life easier.
Mm-hmm.
And do those things. And then find maybe a few more things and kind of expand out from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's stuff that you want to do, not stuff that you feel like you should do. Should is a terrible, terrible state of mind in
I agree.
Content, technology, any of those things. I think a sign of that you're in a healthy place is that you have the energy to be curious. If you're not curious, in general, that tells you've got some deeper issues. So if you're curious and you're feeding your curiosity, then it doesn't feel like a chore. Then the should part, yes, it's intimidating for everybody, especially if you've had a career already and you don't want to look dumb. Yeah. But I also find that the experience we have, having been working for so long, it inoculates you from feeling like I don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore. So I don't mind asking questions where I don't know anything. In fact, some of my best relationships now where I'm learning the most are with 30 to 40-year-olds. Yeah. And I even 25 to 30-year-olds, because I can openly say, I don't get this. I don't know how to do this. And then when I talk about partnering with people, then they can say, I don't know how to do this. So you come both from a place of vulnerability and honesty. Yeah. I don't feel bad saying I don't know how to do something ever. And that's very honest about it. It's when you pretend that you know something is when you're really uncomfortable, because then you're, an imposter. You really are an imposter, as opposed to having imposter syndrome.
Oh, that's a good point. I think, a lot of work environments can sort of incentivize us to act like we know things when we don't. There seems to be a structure of not rewarding people who get curious and ask questions and open themselves up and be vulnerable and can look stupid. You get smacked down for that, as opposed to what you're describing, which is like just genuine curiosity and wonder about anything, that it not only helps you learn, but it opens the door to others to come from the same place. And then all the way full circle back to communicating, collaborating with people. If you're collaborating from a space of wonder and curiosity, as opposed to fear, I mean, really, to me, that's almost the opposite of fear, right? Curiosity and wonder is the opposite of fear, right?
Yeah. And that to me is psychological safety, is being able to be curious, kind of bringing it full circle. It took a while to learn this, but I have no problem being in a meeting and saying, I don't know the answer, or I hadn't really thought about it that way. Let me think about it and get back to you. You don't have to give an answer right then.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to know everything. And everybody in the room always knows that there's the know-it-all. Mm-hmm. So, and by being balanced about that, like, you have to pick your spots. You're not going to say, if the client says, well, how did my business do? And you're like, I don't know. That's obviously moronic.
Right.
But if you're talking about something and you genuinely don't know the answer, that's confidence that you can say that. So I think you have to give yourself permission to be able to say, I don't know. And then people want to teach you. And my husband has this great skill, and I've never learned to do this, but he can know something cold. And I've seen him in business meetings where he won't share his expertise. I would say to him, but you know all that stuff. He goes, yes, but if I'm listening, I'm hearing what they think and I'm learning. And they're so busy telling me what they know and what they think that it's a disadvantage for them, because he's getting all the information. So you kind of have to be able to say, I don't need to prove that I'm the expert. I still find it really hard for me, but he does it really, really well. And I still keep trying to do that, but it's a powerful skill.
That's like a smooth skill, right? It's like there is a way that you are tamping down what is probably one of the most natural human urges of like, hi, I'm here and I matter, like, and being able to quiet that voice enough. And then sort of the strategy of it's interesting. It's like, I'm actually now learning more about them so that I can actually, use that information in some way, which is really interesting. I mean, the idea of not knowing things, it's interesting as a coach. What I find is with younger folks, so many feel like I have to know everything. It's like, I'm showing up to a meeting and I don't know everything. And to your point, if you're being told you should know the answers to like, how were results last quarter? Well, yeah, of course you should have that available. The probably the most common bit of coaching I give is, what would it be like if you didn't have to know everything? Like, how would you act in a meeting if you didn't have to know everything? And where it ultimately can lead is you can be more curious and you can be confident in your ability to ultimately figure something out. Right. Meaning, like you said, like, that's interesting. Yeah, let me think on that and I'll come back to you. Like, because you trust that you have the ability of the problem solving skills, but they're maybe not like, it's not an immediate problem to solve, So I think, but man, it's hard in a lot of places, because a lot of places really will come down on you if you're the person who says, I don't know the answer to that right now. Like, so there is a confidence. I get that. That is like level whatever of confidence building where you've really hit it. You have
to fill the silence. That's the other thing. I used to never like silence, but it's the most powerful thing, the pause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When someone says something shitty to you in a meeting and you can just pause and look at them and say, wait, could you say that again? I don't understand. Say that again. And then they have to say the shitty thing twice. It's so effective. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. It's like stuff like that.
You let them just
word box themselves into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Silence. That's tough. Right. I think in the Zoom world, sometimes it can even feel tougher. Like it almost feels more awkward when you've got 20 faces all in front of you and then there's silence and it's, but it is valuable. And I think it's a emotional intelligence marker too, to be comfortable with that, to not feel like you have to, again, go, hi, I'm here. It's like, no, just let's sit, Yeah, I love that. So I want to wrap up with just a few questions. One of which I'm just curious if there's any conversation you think we're not having about work that we should be having right now.
Short term, long term, and the importance of knowing what are you here for a long term goal or are you here for just short term, and how are you being evaluated? How are you living your life? What are your expectations? I think just aligning expectations. Not everybody's meant to be, the top of the corporate ladder, and that's okay. Short term, maybe you are. Long term, you're not. Long term, maybe you will be, but not right now. Like I took a big break. I took a 5-year break when I had my second kid. I had the opportunity to do that. But when I went back to work, I had a much more clear perspective that long term, I wanted to get back into it. But I had a lot of friends that didn't want to get back into it, but they wanted to work.
Sure.
So I think it's just being able to be clear about what your goals and objectives are and being okay with that. Not everybody's there for the same purpose.
That's a great point. And I think it's one that I'm personally would just love to see that just drift into the culture a little more, like the openness around what do we expect from each other? What do we want from each other when we're working together? The idea that people may have different goals and we can be okay with that. We just have to understand what our expectations are, knowing that, as opposed to to your earlier point, kind of getting pissed off about this person who's, shutting things down at 5 and taking more days off. It's like their expectation of work is different. How do I now work with that person? What is the best way to engage?
But if I'm responsible for the output and the success of the business, then I need to be able to have expectations that are different, because that person is going to require a different level of support from me and my goals.
Yeah.
So it's both ways. And
yeah, absolutely.
That's not going to be a tenable situation if there are misalignments there.
Absolutely. Right. You have to make that decision. Are they bringing enough value in this context? And am I okay with that? And if they're not, well, then they're not. And that's okay though, too. The idea that we can have misalignments and that not everybody needs to be okay everywhere is part of what I think we don't always talk about. It's not everyone is built to work in every place.
Yeah. Well, a third of your life is going to be amazing. Those are the days you live for. A third of your life is going to be, it's okay. Yeah. And a third of your life is going to suck.
Right.
And you cycle through those things. And that's pretty much the order of the way it goes. And so if your life always sucks, then that tells you something about you. And people forget, if you have an expectation that you're the victim or that somebody's out to screw you, you're going to find confirmation that is happening. But you have personal responsibility to take care of yourself. But you also have to have that really balanced expectation that not every day is going to be fun. I have to tell myself this all the time. It's a moment in time. It's constantly revolving. So having that sort of realistic expectation is important.
Yeah, I agree with that. What I would add to that is, even when a day isn't fun, if I can find a way to make a portion of it fun, it helps me get through it. Meaning, find the moment where you tell a little joke to somebody, or you have a little moment with that person that knows you really well, and you can just, even seeing somebody across the room and making a goofy face at them, when you're in the middle of the worst day ever. I think if you can keep that with you, it makes tolerating the sucky days a lot better,
Good way to desuckify things.
Exactly. That's one of my desuckify tools, I suppose. Maybe I can post about that. That's a desuckify tip. Do you have a question you'd like to ask our audience?
Yeah. I'm so curious as to why is it that being ambitious it's not a human right. it's not an expectation. Not everybody has to be ambitious. It could be different things. So why do we judge people in the workplace, I guess, solely on their state of ambition? I'm always curious about that. Are we saying that everyone has to be equally ambitious? That's kind of goes back to level setting.
Yeah.
I just want to go to work. I want to work till 5 o'clock, and I will be compensated and rewarded based on those expectations. Where somebody else is willing to come in and grind. If you're in a grind mode, you should be compensated as a grinder. If you're in there as I'm here from 9 to 5 and you got me from 9 to 5, but nothing above and beyond. And maybe that's just this simplistic expectation of everybody's got the same level of ambition. I don't know if it's possible or not, but I think about that.
I really like that question. And I think there's a million ways you could answer that in an effective way, right? You can decide, how do I deal with the differences, levels of ambition for people? It is interesting because I think about certain companies and it's hard when there are those distinctions, but it's not unsolvable. But in the interest of fairness, sometimes people, I think, aren't willing to draw those lines of like, there's the grinder track and there's the like, I'm just kind of here track. And like being really open and honest about that. Like, hey, we're all on the same team, but some of us here are making a different commitment than others. And when you make a different commitment, we reward that differently. And that's okay. And we don't expect any kind of resentment here when that happens, because you can always flip the switch and move over to one of those other tracks. Yeah. Those are like, they shouldn't be that hard conversations, but they seem like they're hard. People like do everything they can to avoid them. So I'm excited to put that out there, and I hope we get some responses on it, because I think that would be just a really good question for people to ask themselves as business owners, even just, what are we doing here?
What are we doing here? Yeah.
So this is the DesuckifyWork podcast. What would you do if you could wave a magic wand and fully desuckify the world of work? What does that world look like to you?
I think I would eliminate HR.
Yeah. Okay.
I would. I'm sorry.
I like the boldness.
I would have some kind of function where it's not called HR. There's some kind of I don't know what the solution is, but I would remove HR as it's been configured in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
They're not these magical creatures that know how. I can't believe I can't. I don't care anymore. I don't care. I think there's a lot of HR teams that are great, but there are so many that are so empowered to get into the minutia, and they're not psychologists. They're not trained crisis resolution people. And I would imagine, and I have talked to friends of mine in HR, like HR should be about functional things, not clearing up emotional challenges or any of those kind of things. It should be hiring. Sometimes you have to be fired, but I don't think they're there to resolve conflicts or to make culture a better place in a company. I don't, because to me, that feels a little like overreaching, too hard, because not everybody's psychologically sound.
Well, that's fair. The way I see it, I think you could actually slice a lot of these roles up into different departments. There's sort of a legal and compliance part of it. There's hiring, there's, benefits and all that stuff. And then to the extent that culture matters to you as a company, hire people who are experts at that to help. But that piece, to me, if the leaders are not involved in it, it's sort of pointless, because anything that, whether you call it HR or the people group or the whatever, if they're trying to affect the culture, but your executives are not really involved in that conversation, your culture is what the executives are doing, because that's, or not doing, right? They ultimately drive
as much as commission.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But who they are is what drives the culture. So to me, if you want a culture group, it better include the CEO at some point. Yeah. And then they better be empowered to make choices based off of that. But yeah, I get it. And there's a lot of that energy around, of sort of anti-HR energy, because of all the reasons we talked about, the sort of the referee culture. Does work have to be a referee culture? Can it be more of a, I don't know what the alternative term would be.
I don't know, adult
culture, where we mostly work our things out. And then there are There's a lawyer who can deal with the legal stuff. And otherwise, we hire coaches maybe to solve.
Yeah, there we go. I have to say, some of the best stuff I've done through HR. So it's not all negative. I have had some really interesting experiences where HR has done like some of those personality tests and training. And I've learned a lot personal development wise.
Yeah.
But not when they then use it against you.
Well, yeah, that's a really big challenge. And I've seen that from HR and executives where it's like, well, you got these results and that means you shouldn't be doing this, or you're showing, or they sort of pigeonhole you in like, well, you're this person now. It's like, well, no. Yeah, I can appreciate that. One of the sillier things I like to do on the show is add sound effects. I do cat noises and all this other goofy stuff, but I always invite the guest, hey, do you want to add to our growing Desuckified sound effect library? Do you have anything, Jamie?
I do, because in one of my previous roles, we had a team and we were dealing with a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and there was just a lot of nonsense. And there's a great GIF that's a clown car where it's like, I'm Mopsy, I'm Flopsy, I'm Oopsie, I'm Noodles, that getting out of it. It's like 42 people getting out of a clown car. So the clown car of marketing. So my team gave me this. That means you're just being
you are now driving the clown car.
Get me.
My gosh.
So yes, the clown car sound effect. That's my contribution. I'm very excited to share that.
I love that you shared that. And I can imagine some places I've worked where you probably couldn't get any work done given how often that sound might be made.
Seriously. Actually, mine is engraved. Sent me.
Nice.
My little horn has got my name on it. So.
I love that. So the last question I always ask is where can people find you and learn more about what you're doing with the work you're doing with creators, as well as, just following whatever other stuff you're trying to put out into the world?
Thank you. LinkedIn, Jamie Gutfreund on LinkedIn. And I also write for Forbes. So I write a column about the business of the creator economy for marketers.
Awesome.
So look for me in Forbes.
Yeah, I will be sure to point people to all of that stuff. And thank you so much for coming on, Jamie. This was a really fun conversation. I loved your willingness to go into some of those gritty areas and explore stuff. It's been just a ton of fun.
I got a free coaching session. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into the DesuckifyWork podcast. And a huge thanks to Jamie for bringing a bold take on work culture to the show. You can follow Jamie on LinkedIn and check out her column in Forbes about the creator economy. If you enjoyed the conversation and would like to help your teams bring their absolute best to work, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session. Type meow in the calendar invite, and I'll also send you a free DesuckifyWork t-shirt. Bye, everyone.